Derek, can we get a sound check? Yes.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All the things.
All right, it is 6 o'clock, it's December 9th, 2025. We're gonna have a city council meeting tonight in the city of Lake Stevens. We are doing it downtown Mill, and we're also tape recording it for future view on YouTube.
Tape. How old are you?
I know.
I'm showing your age.
We'll be on
It's on VHS.
Yeah. So with that, I would ask all the rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we get a roll call.
Yes, we don't have any tapes to buy though, I'm just saying. There's no tape recording to buy, like you can't buy any tapes.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Councilmember Daci,
Present.
Councilmember Peter Sagan online,
Present.
Councilmember Donahue,
Present.
Councilmember Shipman,
Present.
Councilmember Jorstad,
Here.
Councilmember Ewing, I don't see him, and I know Councilmember Packard is absent tonight.
He is, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, can I get a motion to excuse Councilmember Packard and
I make a motion to excuse Councilmember Packard and Councilmember Ewing.
Second.
second discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And Councilmember-
Mayor, your microphone's not on. People are saying they can't.
Correct.
Okay,
Green is go.
okay.
Council President, can we get approval of the agenda, please?
All right. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Any changes need to be made?
Move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second. Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Mr. Mayor, you have an agenda.
Okay, great. And we have a pretty robust agenda for tonight. So I would ask that all stay laser focused on their topic and move through them quickly as possible. And with that, we will start off with the Great Transit, Community Transit Zip Shuttle update.
All right. This is on.
Yep.
Okay. So thanks so much for having me. My name is Kevin Futhy. I work for Community Transit. I'm a
Oh.
project manager working on the Zip Shuttle pilot projects, and I'm very pleased to bring the council an update about our work here in Lake Stevens. Go ahead to the next slide,
Yeah,
please.
Sorry.
So I'll give a brief overview for those who may not know. I think everyone probably in Lake Stevens is familiar with Zip Shuttle by now. You've seen them driving around, but I'll provide a quick overview of what the project is, talk about its background and the pilot approach that we have, talk about the performance so far, some of the customer trends that we've seen and the feedback that we're hearing from the community, and then talk about next steps. And I'll try to keep this as brief as I can. Next slide. So we've completed 11 months now in Lake Stevens of Zip Shuttle pilot service. Happy to say customers overall are very pleased with the service. All the complaints that we do get, we take very seriously and we work on those, but our surveys have shown really positive response. We're exceeding our customer and ridership growth targets. We've hit our year-end targets a couple months early. And then we continue to optimize the service and respond to customer input. So we're always listening to the customers, trying to make the service work as best as it can for everybody out here in the community. Next slide. Next slide, please. Talk about the background here a little bit, just to remind folks kind of where we've been, how we got here. In 2023, following our Alderwood zone, which launched in 2022, we decided to bring Zip Shuttle out to 3 more communities. We started community working groups in Arlington, Darrington, and Lake Stevens. We conducted surveys of the community to learn about the travel barriers that people face and what are some of the ways they might like to get around more easily in their communities. That led us to launch our Zip pilot projects in each of those areas, including here in Lake Stevens at the very end of 2024. Basically, it was around this time, 2024, when we launched. We've been operating it here all year long. We've, like I said, been making ongoing improvements to the service. We've expanded service hours a bit out here because the demand has been so high. And we're starting now our evaluation process, which will carry over into next year. Early next year, we'll make a final recommendation about whether or not we're going to graduate this from a pilot to a regular service offering like we have in Alderwood. Next slide, please. So again, just as a reminder, here's the service zone for Zip. It's basically the entire city boundaries, plus a couple of little extras, including the Walmart that's just north on Highway 9. There are currently as many as 7 vehicles that can be in service at one time, if necessary, in Lake Stevens. Most of the time, there aren't the full number in service, but there can be if needed, and we have a few spares. The fare is the same as our local buses. It's $2.50 or less. Youth ride for free, 18 and under. On all of our services, including Zip. And then you can book rides using the Zip Shuttle app on your smartphone, or you can call in and talk to somebody to book a ride as well. That's a basic service overview. Next slide, please. So what we wanted to learn from this pilot was answers to several questions. Can we attract customers with this kind of a service in your community? Can we help customers get where they need to go more efficiently? Can we help connect people to the bus and to other transit options? Can we operate efficiently in terms of operational efficiency and cost per boarding? And then can we create a positive customer experience that people are glad to be able to ride the Zip shuttle? Next slide. So I'll talk you through the answers that we've learned so far to these questions. Can we attract customers? We set a goal of reaching 1,000 unique customers from Lake Stevens by the end of the year. That's the green line going across there. We actually crossed that 4 or 5 months into the pilot. We're now approaching 2,500 customers served in Lake Stevens.
Those are unique.
Unique customers, right? Yeah. We set a target for 2025 of having 50,000 boardings in Lake Stevens. Through November, we were at just past 78,000. So we're well past our target. We've been really impressed with the level of ridership in Lake Stevens. Next slide, please. Here's just a map, a sort of a heat map of all the origins and destinations in a typical month in Lake Stevens. So we're seeing people ride all over the place. We see the clusters around, the major business areas and the downtown, but you see all the residential neighborhoods. People are booking this from their home to go shopping, to go to school, to go to appointments, to get to the transit center. It's just all throughout the city, people are riding. So who is riding Zip? Each one of these bar charts here is our 4 different zones, and I've circled Lake Stevens with the dotted line. On the far right is Alderwood, just as a point of comparison. In Alderwood, there's no high school in that zone, so we have much less youth ridership there. It's mostly adults riding. In each of these 3 new pilot areas, we're covering pretty much the whole town, including all the schools. So we see much higher youth ridership. As much as 70% of our ridership on Zip is people 18 and under. And with a lot of youth in the room tonight, I was just curious if I could ask how many of you have ridden on Zip? Raise your hand if you have.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
I'm actually surprised.
Yeah.
I thought maybe really nobody. Okay.
They're walkers.
This is not the audience, I guess.
They're big walkers.
Okay.
They may all be drivers.
Has
I'd
anyone,
like to know how many
maybe
have
you're
a
driving.
driver's license.
Yeah, maybe you're driving. Raise your hand if you drive. Okay, that's
Oh,
why.
okay.
That's why. Okay. So maybe people who don't have their licenses yet or don't have access to a car are more common riders. Go to the next slide, please. We surveyed the community over the summer. We had about 350 responses from our Zip customers. We asked them what sort of trips they're taking on Zip. They could check all that apply. And the most common thing is time flexible errands like going shopping, going to the park, going out for recreation. But 30% of people did say they used it to get to other transit, like getting to the bus, getting over to the transit center. People use it to go to work and go into school. But the most common reason people use it are just more those flexible trips. And then one thing we learned is that for some people, especially those without access to a car who can't drive, including people with disabilities, senior citizens, and youth, 25% of them say they would not have taken their most recent trip if Zip was not available. So it's kind of become a lifeline for some people who didn't really have any other convenient ways to get around. So next slide. On efficiency, happy to say we're hitting our targets and actually exceeding them. We set a goal of being able to serve 2.5 passenger trips per vehicle per hour. We're at 3.5. So far exceeding that goal. We wanted to have 50% of our trips be shared trips where multiple customers are kind of linked together. That helps us be able to serve more people more efficiently with the limited resources we have. We're at 51% right now, so exceeding that target. And again, this has a positive impact on wait times, on cost per boarding, and on trip availability for people. So it's great to see. So in terms of I mentioned the survey that we did over the summer, we had 350 respondents from Lake Stevens or thereabouts. We asked people to provide kind of what we call the Net Promoter Score. This is a score of saying, like, would you recommend this to a friend or a colleague, basically? And so the score can go from negative 100 to positive 100, and anything above 0 is good. But we're at really favorable rating of positive 69. So and really an excellent score for Zip and Lake Stevens overall. Some of the areas, though, that people did say there's the biggest room for improvement would be on wait times. So we know that people want it to come as quickly as possible, obviously, so that they don't have to wait for it. Ride availability. There are times of day when if you're booking a ride, it'll ask you, hey, try again in a few minutes because all the vehicles are busy right now because it's become so popular here in Lake Stevens. So sometimes you might have to wait 5-10 minutes, try to book a ride again, and then you'll get connected to a driver. We've added vehicles to Lake Stevens in response to this, and things have improved, but it's still an area that we are struggling with a little bit because of the very high demand that we've had.
Can I ask a question in there?
Yes.
So I know one of the issues that has been brought to me, and I'm okay with this group because none of these kids ride it, but the problem we have with so many young riders bumping out our seniors who need to get to an appointment. Are we seeing the capability maybe with new, is that problem becoming dissipated as we add more cars? Are you seeing that data?
Yeah, we do. And we hear a lot of, we get comments from seniors in particular about, oh, I can't book when school gets out because the youth kind of like jam up the system at that time. So we do a couple of things. One, like I said, we've added some hours in the PM peaks when the wait times have gotten longer. And from October to November, we actually saw the long wait times drastically come down when we kind of shifted the supply a little bit. The other thing we're doing is just trying to educate all customers, seniors, and everybody to just, if you're trying to get to an appointment that has a fixed time, you got to be there at a specific time, going to work, going to school, going to a doctor's office, just book ahead a little extra so that if you do encounter a long wait time or vehicles aren't available, you've got a little bit of padding there in your travel so you can still make it on time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So I mentioned wait times. This is monthly average wait times going back to the beginning of the year. And it's, as you can see, it's trending up, but it's also kind of stabilized at around 20 minutes on average. Last month, we had 71% of our customers picked up in under 20 minutes. 17% had to wait between 20 and 30 minutes, and then 11% had a wait time of over 30 minutes. So again, for folks that are trying to get somewhere by a specific time, they really do need to just make sure they pack a little patience, add a little extra time ahead of time so that they can be sure to get where they need to go. As far as next steps, mentioning that we're continuing to try to improve the service and bring those wait times down as best we can, responding to the customer feedback that we're getting. We'll have recommendations early next year on the future of the pilot. And then when we do that, we'll come back to council and share those results and provide another update to you all. Happy to take any questions.
I'm curious to know the status of the service in Alderwood after running the pilot. What happened then?
Yeah, Alderwood continues to grow. I mean, we had light rail come in during the pilot or after pilot phase. So we had to add service there when light rail opened. We're also preparing for the next year that when the World Cup comes, there's going to be a lot of tourism traffic we expect at the hotels, even around Alderwood because of the link connection. But it's just taken off in a continued way there as well, especially with the mall and all the businesses around Alderwood. Kind of people come in on light rail, get onto Zip and ride it around the area. Youth ridership is still not huge there, I think, because we don't have a school in that zone. So out here and in Arlington and Darrington, we have far more youth ridership. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Thanks.
I just want to thank you for coming, and this was a great presentation. You answered the question I had in your presentation. And I just kind of wanted to piggyback on what the mayor said. I'm your liaison with our senior center. And that was kind of the comment they were making too, is that they liked ZIP, but oftentimes when they needed it, it wasn't booked. And according to the drivers, when they would talk to them, the youth were using it. And it definitely looks like that as far as your graphs as well. The youth are the main users of it, which I know can be frustrating to some, but what a great benefit to families. So,
Anything else? Goes without saying, this is and I'm glad that it came to Lake Stevens, and
Yeah.
thank you very much for your presentation. We got a couple other community transit people back in the back of the room. Thank you for coming. It's nice to see you again. This last Thursday was my last meeting at CT, so I'm basically done with that, but it's a great organization and they're doing some really good stuff. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great. Any other questions? Hey, great presentation. Appreciate you guys being in the city, and we'll look forward to your next report.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have not an old, but a good old friend of mine, Dave Hayes, going to talk to us about the task force.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks for Chief Bezzuso for getting me on the agenda and helping with this. My name's Dave Hayes. I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of you guys here and there over the years. I've been beating around the county here for most of my adult life. I was employed by the sheriff's office for about 26 years, law enforcement officer for 31 total, all here in Snohomish County. But I recently retired from the sheriff's office and came back as the drug task force commander. So that was a transition in July of this year. So I've tried real hard to hit the ground running and get presentations like this set up, and just so I can promote my team and thank you all for your support of the drug task force. So slide please. Maybe. Oh, sorry, Kelly. It was Okay, so these are just a few of the topics that I'm going to talk about, kind of introduce you to who we are, who governs us, what our mission is, and then talk a little bit about drug trends and a little bit of drug identification for those who don't already know. Slide. So the Drug Task Force is a multi-jurisdictional task force. So we have staff members from different jurisdictions and agencies throughout the county. This is our staffing makeup. Our lieutenant is from the sheriff's office. We have three sergeants from different agencies, 15 detectives from different agencies, couple of federal special agents, Snohomish County Prosecutor's Office participates as well, and some support staff. Slide. So here's a list of our contributing agencies, and you'll see a difference here in a moment when I talk about the interlocal agreement, about the difference between a contributing agency and a participating agency. But Snohomish County is our fiduciary. When it comes down to holding our money for us. The Drug Task Force is kind of a unique operation for the whole county. We're a separate corporation, if you will, but all of our assets and all of our policies and whatnot are controlled by Snohomish County as our fiduciary. So we have to maintain all of our policies through the county. And I am actually a county employee as the Drug Task Force commander. Next. The governance of the Drug Task Force is made up by the contributing jurisdiction chiefs. So that's the list of the executive board members there. The chair is the sheriff and the co-chair is the Everett Police Chief. But every jurisdiction that provides a law enforcement officer or a staff member to the Drug Task Force has a position on the task force. We have one at-large member from chiefs in the county, and that is Chief Bezzuso currently is our at-large chief. So I mentioned the interlocal agreement. Y'all should, I suspect that you have seen the 2026 interlocal agreement, or if hopefully it's on your agenda sometime soon. But the interlocal agreement creates the Drug Task Force. Every municipality and the county in Snohomish County participate in that and pay into it to support the Drug Task Force operation. So I have the figure up there, $11,000 and change is Lake Stevens 2026 per diem. And that per diem is paid for on a per capita basis. So based on your population for each given city. Our other forms of revenue is asset forfeiture. That's generally our operating budget, if you will. The ILA, by the way, those ILA revenues pay for 2 salaries, mine and 1 support staff, or a half support staff. Asset forfeiture is our primary source of income for our broad operations. That's what keeps the lights on. But when it comes down to the largest contributions and the largest funding sources is our source of personnel, and that's the contributing jurisdictions. So Snohomish County provides 5 personnel. Everett PD provides 4 or 5 personnel. So those are the largest investments, or those salaries paid for by the contributing jurisdictions. So a moment ago, when I talked about the difference between a participating jurisdiction and a contributing jurisdiction, Lake Stevens is a participating jurisdiction because you participate in the ILA. Contributing jurisdictions give us staff and personnel. So this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit about Northwest HIDA. You'll see a grant there. Northwest HIDA is the high intensity drug trafficking area. It's a program of the White House. It's been around since the 80s. It's ran by the Office of National Office of Drug Control Policy. So basically the drug czar, if you've heard of the drug czar, the national drug czar, that's the boss of the HIDA program. And then we get some support from the Stillaguamish and tribal administrations as well. All right. So our mission, the Drug Task Force mission, most people think, well, Drug Task Force, you must investigate drugs broadly, both at the street level and elsewhere, but that's not necessarily a true statement. Our focus, our mission is on mid to high level drug trafficking organizations. So our mission is directly towards affecting the supply of drugs coming into our broad Snohomish County community. So that brings us into cartel level investigations, large national, intercommunity, interstate, and transnational criminal organizations. That's our primary mission. But as you'll see here in a moment, I hope it's the next slide. Specialized service, not yet. As you'll see here in a moment, we also assist other local agencies as requested with local drug problems. As an example, here in Lake Stevens, it's been a couple of years. We've had 2 different operations, one drug house over south of the Frontier Village area that we assisted Chief Bezzo with, and then another issue at the high school. And we were successful in both of those operations. So the high school one, I'll talk a little bit about that because we do have some students here today, so maybe that'll be a good source of information. That particular case was brought to us with a particular target in mind, a specific drug dealer, and we inquired with that drug dealer with a confidential source, not a confidential source, I'm sorry, an undercover detective. And we were able to go and make a purchase from him and stop that activity in the high school. Hopefully it ceased through that particular source anyway. So I'll talk a little bit more about our other operations here in a moment. But here's just a few operational statistics for our cases and arrests over the last 5 years. And you're going to notice in 2024, it looks like our number is down. And 2022, our number was way up. There's an explanation for that. In 2022, we were assisting the sheriff's office and the city of Everett with specific, it's called a, oh, doggone, it's going to go out my ear. Large level, high level, street level operations. We addressed that corridor down there along Highway 99 and Airport Road, 128th Street, that entire corridor, to try to work our way up to the primary sources of drugs coming into that area and affecting there's a high homeless population down there and others, just to affect that corridor down there. We were successful in that as well. We took down a substantial drug dealer down there just by our local Everett detectives recognizing him as he was making approaches. And that ended up in a very substantial seizure of drugs, stolen materials. He was basically trading stolen material. People would go into to the stores down there, Home Depot and other area stores, steal merchandise, come and trade it to him for drugs, and then he would go and fence it. So, and we also took about $550,000 cash out of his apartment. A couple vehicles. But that's why the arrest number was up so high that year. The arrest number this year is low. We're at 31 as of the end of the third quarter. And that's because we had a large, what we would refer to as a wire case down in King County, where we had people deliver, large drug trafficking organization delivering drugs up into Snohomish County, but they all lived down there. And we got up, it became a federal case. We ended up getting up on their phones and taking down that drug trafficking operation. So when we have a large operation like that, our numbers actually go down because it takes such a focus to work on the surveillance of in those cases. Next slide. And here's some drug seizure statistics of what we've taken down over the past few years. These include the drugs that we buy as evidence during our operations. And you're going to notice some ups and downs there of increased seizures. And it's going, I don't know if this will be a surprise to anybody, but fentanyl powder has overtaken fentanyl pills, the blues, the M30s, and drug trafficking. So that is our largest target right now is fentanyl powder, and it's by far the most deadly drug out there in our communities. And methamphetamine, unfortunately, is the cheapest, so there's a high demand for that as well. Slide. And gun seizures. So it's my expectation of each of my detectives when they go out and do these operations, when they're buying drugs from people and getting probable cause to make arrests, that they also ask for guns. A high amount of these guns are stolen as well. So it's just another focus of mine and the Drug Task Force Executive Board that we try to seize guns as much as we can. And you'll notice that one of the most common themes that you see in drug seizure pictures in the media, you see drugs. What else do you see? Guns. It's very, very common for the drug dealers and drug traffickers out there to be carrying or to be trafficking in stolen guns as well. So slide. So here's the slide I mentioned before about our specialized service. Drug market interdiction was the term that wasn't coming to mind a moment ago. And that's what we had down there on that 128th Airport Road. We provide covert surveillance. We own multiple cameras. That was something that we've also helped out Lake Stevens on. DNA grabs in cold cases, basically anything that has to do with undercover or covert investigations are things that we're able to assist with. So if any other agency in the county ends up having a cold case homicide or cold case rape, and they need to go get DNA from a primary suspect, we assist with that. We've had some great success with that. We also provide asset forfeiture services to other agencies. So there's some drug trends and charts there. Yeah, as I mentioned before, fentanyl is the primary drug in not just Snohomish County, but the whole state and for the nation for that matter. But don't give up on methamphetamine. It is widely used and very deadly. So the horrible thing about methamphetamine and the form of meth that we're seeing out here here locally now, it's called P2P meth, is that before somebody dies of a heart attack from taking too much methamphetamine, if you're a continued user, it'll literally drive you crazy. Meth-induced psychosis is a real thing. And it's a real thing here in the Snohomish County community as well. And that is specifically because of the type of meth that's being trafficked here to this area. It's not the meth that was being kicked locally 20 or 30 years ago when I was a young cop. The stuff they're bringing up from Mexico now does cause that drug-induced psychosis and the other social issues that you see in a lot of street people today. So there is still an issue with rave drugs, still an issue with diverted pharmaceuticals. One thing that I will share, because there are some young folks here in the audience as well, is not specifically on those diverted drugs, but counterfeit drugs broadly. Now, blues or M30s are the most common counterfeit drug that you see out there, just a fentanyl pill. But the other things that we see is counterfeit Xanax bars, counterfeit Adderall. Those are things that are also out there in the community, and those are drugs that affect young people specifically. They'll get something from a friend, or buy something online that they think is a real Adderall pill or a real Xanax pill, and it ends up being laced with fentanyl. So my message to everybody, no matter who you are, is don't trust anything that you don't know that's not coming from a pharmacist. If your pharmacist doesn't prescribe it to you and you don't go to your local pharmacy and pick it up, don't trust it. Don't trust online pharmacies at all, because many of those online pharmacies are in India and other nations. So I just don't trust them at all. Next slide. So here we have some drug prices, and you'll see that I get most of my numbers from the Northwest High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area stats. So these stats are for all of Western Washington and Eastern Washington. And the biggest thing to note there is just the cost of meth compared to the rest of them. Meth is by far the cheapest drugs out there. And the second leading killer of drugs out there on our streets. Next slide. How do drugs get into our community? This is kind of a brief graphic of how they do. Drug mules up and down I-5 and up and down the primary corridors from the southern border states. It's still very common, but U.S. Postal Service, FedEx, UPS, bus, train, marine, any way that you can think of, they're coming up. Now with the higher pressures on the southern border, we're starting to see more marine traffic. So even the Port of Everett and Payne Field have started, there's been increased use there. Slide. How do people buy drugs? How do people get in touch with drug dealers? Oftentimes social media. That's a very common way, or just friend to friend. So, but there's just the most common ways. The weird thing about WhatsApp and Telegram is that they're not as easily trackable. So it makes our job a little bit harder, but we do have tools to get into those as well. So there's a picture of a couple different forms of fentanyl. Probably one of the most dangerous things about fentanyl is the fact that it gets mistaken for other drugs. It gets mixed into other drugs as an adulterant very commonly. You see it mixed into cocaine, you see it mixed into meth. But sometimes there will be, now with the oncoming increase of powdered fentanyl out there in our community, people will pick up a bag and think that it's Coke, but it's actually fentanyl. And they'll start it or smoke it, and it'll kill them really rather quickly. The push towards powdered fentanyl is largely caused by the lack of consistency and quality fentanyl pills, unfortunately, coming up from the southern border. So that's what's really pushed users towards fentanyl powder instead. But those are the two primary forms that you see there. So we don't see as much colored fentanyl anymore. Some of you probably saw pictures here a couple of years ago of what we called Lucky Charms, or fentanyl pills in different shapes and neon colors and stuff. So we don't see that as much anymore, but it's still around. So slide. So common fentanyl adulterants, things that are added to fentanyl to increase its strength and effectiveness. Most commonly here in Snohomish County and Washington State, we are seeing an increase in xylazine is out there in our community. We haven't seen the horrible effects of xylazine that you may have heard from the Eastern Seaboard, from Pennsylvania, West Virginia, the huge open sores, and I had it explained to me once by some friends in human services and the treatment side about why they feel that xylazine hasn't had the horrible effects in this community that it has elsewhere, but it's not coming to me right now. But the thing about any of these drugs that you see up there is that they don't respond to Narcan. The Narcan is a lifesaver in our community. Yeah, you get some communities out there, some folks out there that think that say that Narcan just continues the problem. It is an absolute lifesaver. And will never sit back and allow somebody to try to tell me that it's not anything but a lifesaver. So nitazines are another thing that we have found in the community. We've had a few different takedowns where we found nitazines mixed in with fentanyl. Metatotamine has raised its head on the eastern seaboard, but it hasn't been found here in Washington yet, to my knowledge yet. So, slide. Methamphetamine, of course, very common, comes in a couple different forms. This is an upper, jacks you up. What do people die from when they die of a meth overdose? A heart attack. It's not a respiratory thing like an opioid. So that's generally what meth looks like, the stuff that we buy most commonly. Sometimes you'll see it in powder form. Slide. This one's kind of hard to read. These are overdose fatalities in each county, almost each county throughout the state of Washington. And these are numbers that come from the medical examiner's office in each of the counties. And we've had some messaging out there that overdoses are going down, but you'll see here in Snohomish County over the past year, they're actually up a little bit based on this graphic. So what is that, 309 over the current 12-month period? And last year it was, I can't read that. 261. So I don't want anybody to ever get the idea that the drug problem is going away, that it's becoming less and less. I think we hear less about it in the media, but the impact of these drugs out there in our communities is still just as broad, just as deadly as it ever has been. Slide. And I put this graphic up there to drive home the point that the majority of drug overdose deaths in Washington state are caused by multiple drugs in the blood system of the victim. The most common combination is meth and fentanyl. The largest single killer is fentanyl, but the largest combination is fentanyl and meth, followed by fentanyl and cocaine. It creates that speedball effect. Slide. And I put this up there just as kind of a general information. The DEA and the Northwest HIDA developed information about, when you're looking at powder forms, about how much of the drug is typically in the powder form, considering the adulterants and stuff, and what the dosage amount is for a least lethal dose of, say, fentanyl. In this particular case, I can't see that far. Is that 86,000, 96,000?
96.
So, yeah. So it takes a tiny amount of fentanyl to overdose on, particularly if you're an inexperienced user. So I hope you got some information that you didn't already know about the Drug Task Force and our operations. I'll take any questions that you have.
This is for Dave.
We had a town hall a couple of years ago, and then I think also the following spring. Is there a plan for another town hall to share this information with the community?
Yes. So I came to the one over at the high school, at the mid-high twice.
Cap. Yep.
Yeah. And I will make myself available anytime I'm invited.
Yep.
So that's another thing that I didn't talk a lot about. And if I could, I'm sorry, I skipped over something. Partnerships. Something that is a huge focus of mine and of the Drug Task Force, because I feel that it's so important, is our partnerships, cross-disciplinary, multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional partnerships. We've heard it 100,000 different times that we can't arrest our way out of the drug problem in our state, and we can't. But through partnerships, we can have a broader effect. So we have partnerships with Snohomish County Human Services, with a couple of different treatment facilities, with the medical examiner's office, the health department. My drug task force, my staff distributes the Narcan to all the other county employees. It's these partnerships and a broad focus instead of a laser focus on the overall problem. I like to look at it as being a three-legged stool. If you pull any of these legs out, the problem is just going to continue. So if you pull out enforcement, support of law enforcement, you're going to continue to fall. If you pull out treatment, you're going to continue to fall. So I really encourage policymakers at both the local and state level, federal level, to focus on the problem broadly. A lot of people say that the war on drugs failed, that the war on drugs started by President Reagan back in the 80s has failed. I believe that it's still ongoing, but one of the reasons that it was less effective than it could have been is because it was a large focus on law enforcement. And a lot of that blame now today is going on law enforcement. I believe that that's misdirected. I think that we need to focus on it broadly, looking at the human services aspect of it, harm reduction, treatment, and law enforcement, all working together, sharing information like I do now with all those other partners throughout the county. So it's an important part of my message. I apologize for letting it go.
Good stuff, Dave. What else do you have for Dave? Nothing?
Thank you.
All
Yeah,
right.
Dave, tell all your guys, thank you for working and be safe out there. It's a tough job they do.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, let's move forward to council business, or we have citizens' comments. Do we have anyone online who wishes to provide citizens' comments?
Only one person online. If you would like to speak to the council during citizen comments, please raise your digital hand. Nope.
I don't have any green sheets. Was there anybody? Was there anybody in person who wanted to provide citizens' comments tonight? Seeing none, we'll close that and move to council business, council president.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and start online with Councilmember Peter Sagan.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Dorstad.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to attend the Alliance for Housing Affordability quarterly meeting last week, along with Director Wright. I think the most important part of the meeting was the opportunity for the council members who sit on that board, some of whom that was their last meeting, to give feedback to the chair about how those meetings could actually be more beneficial to the city, not just the city council members that attend, but the member cities. And there was some really good feedback about how the support that cities need, and that the Alliance for Housing Affordability is in a position to be able to provide that support and doesn't always. And so I am always optimistic that we are belonging to activities that happen in this county that do end up helping our city. And so I hope that some of that information was taken, some of that feedback was taken, and that there will be changes that will be of better benefit to our city moving forward. So I was happy to be a part of that conversation. I think that's it for me. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Shipman.
Nothing this week.
Okay, Councilmember Daughtry.
Yeah, I attended Community Transit Board of Directors meeting on Thursday. It was a really good meeting. And then I also attended Youth Advisory Council last Wednesday. It's nice to have one of the Youth Advisory Council here in the audience, Calvin. Participates greatly in the Youth Advisory Council, and they're doing some great stuff. They got a lot of plans they're having for the next year. And they're going to have their last meeting here shortly with their little Christmas celebration they're doing with each other. So that'll be fun. And that's all I have.
All right, and I attended the Planning Commission meeting last week. It was pretty brief, where they wrapped up their public hearing on some of the same material we're going to hear about tonight. So back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Real quick, today I attended the AWC Healthcare Board Trust Board, of which I'm a member. It's interesting discussion about the healthcare benefits that many of the cities in our state partake in. And tomorrow we have an SCT general meeting as well in the evening that I'll be speaking at. And then Thursday, an AWC Board of Trustees meeting as well. And then I would remind everyone to put it on their calendar for Saturday evening, 6 o'clock. We'll be doing the Lake Stevens tree lighting, and we will see if the mayor can hit the button when he's supposed to hit the button at the right time this year. Yeah, I think I'm like 3 for 5,
Is there
3 for 6.
we take bets or is there an opportunity?
Someone's running the board on it.
Okay,
So
great.
you can put some bets on it.
Sounds like another chance to use AI.
It is. Ooh, an AI button to push it. I bet I can get an Optimus robot to push it at the right time. Hmm. All right. With that, there's no city department reports. Can I get a motion to pass the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed?
Aye.
Pass the consent agenda. I'm sorry, Gary, I forgot about you up there, but I heard a yes on the yes. Let's go into a public hearing. This is going to be a continuation of a public hearing we did last week on STEP and co-living housing code amendments. That public hearing is still open, and I will defer to David for additional comments.
All right, thank you, Mayor Gailey. Council David Levitan, Principal Planner. So we're here tonight to continue the public hearing for LUA 2025-0182. These are state mandated updates related to STEP housing. So that's emergency shelters, transitional housing, emergency housing, and permanent supportive housing, as well as co-living housing, which is things like boarding houses. So just wanted to provide a really quick run through of the public hearing last week, which was open on December 2nd. So there was a staff presentation, initial council discussion. We did receive one comment from a member of the public. There was council discussion and deliberation. Really, the focus of that was primarily on transitional housing, kind of trying to differentiate it between emergency housing and emergency shelters, what makes transitional housing unique, how would the land use review process that would be most appropriate for transitional housing. At the end of that meeting, staff offered a couple of different options. One was to shift transitional housing from an outright permitted use to a type 2 land use permit. And the other option was to kind of keep it as an outright permitted use to provide a little bit more clarity within the definition of transitional housing, to distinguish it from emergency housing and emergency shelters. So that's the option that staff went with, and that's reflected in the updated ordinance, which is attachment 1. So that hearing was continued to a date certain of this evening. So as far as those revisions to ordinance 1209, primarily are on page 52 of your packet, and they're highlighted in yellow. So staff, beyond the general definition that was included within the RFCW, the Revised Codes of Washington, we added some additional information from a variety of sources, including from the Department of Commerce's kind of fact sheet on STEP housing. So that's noting that these are typically run by nonprofit organizations, and also that they typically involve case management services that kind of go above and beyond what you would typically see in emergency housing or emergency shelter use. So those are things like credit repair, employment help, basically things to help facilitate that transition from kind of homelessness or near homelessness to hopefully permanent housing in the future. So we went over this last time, and the analysis is included in the staff report from your December 2nd packet. But basically, staff and the Planning Commission in their recommendation had made findings that the proposal is consistent with the code amendment criteria listed there. So I'm not going to go back through it, but basically consistency with the comp plan, the Growth Management Act, and then providing that nexus between the regulations and the public health and safety. So with that, I am happy to answer any additional questions tonight, specifically related. to the changes that have been proposed since the last meeting. But staff is recommending that the city council adopt the findings and approve ordinance 1209 this evening, either as shown in attachment 1 or with any proposed revisions based off your discussion and deliberation this evening. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for David?
David, and forgive me because I know you've been over this several times, both in planning commission and now in council. But can you walk me through really quick what additional options does the city have available under a type 2 process versus a type 1 as far as deciding whether or not to issue a permit and for
So what we have now is for affordable and additional removed less permit, which again, right, we do like diverse uses, we mandate evaluate against kind of all safety and governments, and also manage regulations associated with that. The ordinance includes a new section 1444-100, which addresses supplementary use regulations just for emergency housing and emergency shelters. So that includes requirements for a site management plan, addressing things like parking, security, basically, providing that nexus between the health and safety and those regulations and trying to establish kind of clear and objective standards and a clear and objective process for evaluating these types of uses. And so there was some discussion about potentially shifting, basically including transitional housing as a use that would be subject to those supplementary use regulations in chapter 1444. That's not staff's recommendation based on some of the guidance from Commerce and the desire to really keep transitional housing more aligned with other types of housing, and kind of providing that distinction between transitional housing and emergency housing and shelters. But there is the option to shift that to a type 2 review process, which would then include public notice and the opportunity for public comments. And so for a type 2, that goes to all property owners within 300 feet of the property, and also would get noticed in the newspaper and posted on site.
Okay, thank you. And so once the permit is issued, then what is the difference between outright permitted use or type 1 and then type 2? Because it's my understanding then there's additional follow-up and potential, I guess, enforcement mechanisms or at least checks to make sure that the permit is being complied with. Is that correct?
There would be. So for emergency housing and emergency shelters, those supplementary use regulations establish that what's just, for lack of a better term, an emergency housing and shelter permit. And that's where it's good for the initial 2 years when you go through that type 2 review process, and then you're required to renew it every 2 years after that. So that, as proposed currently, is not required for either permanent supportive housing or for transitional housing. It would just be an outright permitted use that would be subject to just the building permit.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, it was also the recommendation of the planning committee, who spent a considerate amount of time going through this and bringing forth their recommendations, that transitional housing also not be subject to the type 2 permit. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Very early on, they recognized and they desired to have kind of this dual path approach where transitional housing and permanent supportive housing are through that outright permitted process, no land use review process, no public noticing, and that emergency housing and emergency shelters should be subject to those additional land use review processes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for David? All right, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and open the floor for public comments on just this topic, just this topic of this public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to provide public comment on? Okay, anybody in the audience? Seeing none, hearing none, then we'll move forward, close the public comments section. David, any further?
No, that is it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'll open up the floor to discussion on the council. And on this, and if there's no discussion, I'd look for a motion.
So, all right, I have discussion. First up, I apologize to staff and my fellow council members that I wasn't here last week to participate in this discussion. I did watch it online to get caught up. And so yeah, it seemed like a good discussion moving towards a particular resolution. So I apologize if I'm about to throw a wrench in that with my own take. I would actually be in favor of the of making this type 2 hearing, at least for the transitional, if not for all step housing, and I'll explain why. Anytime Olympia comes to us and says, you're going to do something, and then in typical fashion provides definitional guidance that for me is still ambiguous, less than what I would like to be. That was one of the things watching the Planning Commission go through this. It seemed to be a struggle. And the staff did their best with what they had, but it seems really hard to pin down what each of these categories are. And so I do not like, in general, being told we have to implement this. We don't quite know what it is. And then it's going to be really hard to check under just a outright permitted use. I feel like the type 2 process would give us more structure about what it is, more tools to make sure that the uses are, what they've said they're going to be. So that's kind of my high level one. And then some of the concerns I heard last time about making this a type 2, I'll just say outright, I completely agreed with. The two I heard that stuck out to me were, one, notice is not the same as education. Completely agree with that. The other one is that opening up as a type 2 would invite participation from people who may not fully understand what this is. I guess where I differ is, we're coming off an election cycle where two of the big themes I heard were transparency from the city council and from the city in general, and then also, more control over development going on within our city. And so for me, I guess I can't see how choosing a process that has less oversight, less control, less opportunity for citizens to participate would be the way to go. And I feel like, for me, the better approach is to invite that participation and then do a better job of educating, not withholding that participation. So for that reason, I would be in favor of the type 2.
Gary.
I could not agree more with Councilmember Donahue's comments. They were spot on, and I support his comments 100%.
Okay. Any other? Good.
I also support Councilmember Donahue's comments. I think this is a really difficult discussion to have because we want to help people move forward in their lives and we don't want to put obstacles up in front of them. But this oversight, I don't see as an obstacle. And I think education is going to be important. And I think that could be part of the type 2. I think this also will make people more comfortable. I agree with Councilmember Donahue. A lot of what I saw was transparency. Council is bought out by developers. We're not controlling anything going on in our city. And so our city's going down the drain. I mean, I don't agree with any of those statements, but that seems to be the perception of our community. So I think adding more oversight to it would be beneficial in that there's just a few more safeguards and gives us an opportunity to do a little more education and oversight, because we always hope for the best, right? Whenever we're doing anything to help, we always hope for the best. And it sounds like this would just give some more oversight and guidelines to assure the best outcome.
Any other discussion?
I'm sure this isn't going to come to a shock to many of you, but I wholly disagree for a couple of reasons. Would just like an opportunity to share those reasons. I think that transparency is incredibly important. And I don't think anybody is suggesting that we move forward in a way that isn't transparent. My concern with opening up transitional housing to a type 2 process has been illustrated both by this council, by members of the planning commission and by members of our community who are not educated and just don't have the exposure to the homeless population, maybe that others have. And so there's a real bias, there's a real assumption about what a homeless person looks like or what a homeless family might look like. And a real fear of having services that serve those homeless families and those individuals in their neighborhood. And if this is subject to public approval, if this is subject to public notice, you're going to have public individuals who don't have that knowledge making decisions about whether or not those people should be living in their neighborhood. As someone who works in human services, as someone who's worked with this population, what I know is that when there are supported housing options for folks, those people are able to learn the skills that they need to live successfully. And if we don't have a mechanism that provides that support to people, then we don't have an option to provide the folks who are homeless in our communities the support they need to move in the different direction. Additionally, this council has made decisions before that have gone against planning commission recommendations. And we as a council decided we're going to give weight to our planning commission who put in hours of their time going into the weeds about things like this, going through this with a fine tooth comb. I watched the recordings too, and they deliberated quite a bit about this specific issue about transitional housing being subject to the type 2 permitting and came to the recommendation that transitional housing shouldn't be subject to that process for reasons that I've stated and other reasons. So I feel very strongly that subjecting transitional housing to a type 2 process puts a barrier to developing that type of housing in our community that does a disservice to those folks who most need it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So if it was type 2, what barriers are they? Like, would that then limit so they would not be allowed? What barriers would there be that would prevent a step housing within a neighborhood?
Is that directed to staff?
Pardon me?
Is that directed to staff?
I don't know who to direct it to. I guess you'd probably be the best to direct it to. Would a type 2 provide barriers that would prevent people from moving forward out of homelessness into transitional housing?
I don't know if I would define it as a barrier. It's an additional regulatory process that the operators would be required to go through. And so when they're choosing to site their use, instead of just being able to pick any property that is zoned to allow for either residential uses or hotel uses, which that wouldn't change as part of the review process. It would still have to be permitted in any zone that allows for residential uses or hotel uses. It would change basically. It depends on how the council decided they wanted to do it. Are you essentially proposing to just shift transitional housing, that's chapter 1444-100, which is these new supplementary use regulations that as proposed only apply to emergency housing and shelters? If you're saying transitional housing would have to address all of those supplementary use regulations, have to prepare a site management plan, have to provide a parking analysis, have to go through kind of all the steps that are included within that new section within chapter 1444. Again, maybe that's not a quote unquote physical barrier or, a hard and fast barrier, but it's additional process that they'd be required to go through. They'd be going through public comment where they wouldn't before. It still would be a type 2 decision is still, a planning director decision based off of the record, based off of analysis for consistency with those use regulations, with the comprehensive plan, with the zoning code. So kind of long story short, I would say it's more additional process than actual prohibiting them. It would just make it harder to cite them.
Well, and David, I think you kind of touched on a critical distinction that I want to make. The statute protects this. We're not allowed to. We have to support our comprehensive plan to a certain degree. What I'm more interested in is people knowing what's going in their neighborhood and then also being able to make sure that what they're told is going in the neighborhood is what went into the neighborhood. So I view it process is the exact word I have in my head. Maybe it's my bias, due process. It gives people a chance to participate and offer comment because it's not about keeping it out. I think, if there's a need, we very much want that need filled. It's just about regulating it and making sure it's done in the right way. And I really appreciate your comment about the planning commission and the deliberation, watching that process. That's actually a perfect example of why I think participation is so important. Because at the beginning, I saw opinions change. Sorry, I keep hearing this popping noise. I'm too close? Okay. That I guess was, not to be overly poetic about the beauty of it. I saw initial reactions when this subject first came up, and through these discussions, they were long, they were messy. They asked a lot of staff about what's this, what's that, but through that education, viewpoints were changed, and that's how they were able to arrive at a place where they were more comfortable with it. And that's the type of thing I don't want to deny to the citizens in general, even if it would be cleaner and neater and easier. I guess just for me in general, as much as it might make more work for us as, city government, that's the route I would prefer to go.
I actually don't think it makes more work for us because I think if I am a development director with a nonprofit and I know that there is a need for transitional housing east of the trestle, and I have the opportunity to look at property in Lake Stevens or Snohomish or Monroe or unincorporated Snohomish County, and I see that there are 17 steps in the city of Lake Stevens, but there are only 5 steps in Monroe or Snohomish, I'm not even going to try to put that site in Lake Stevens. I'm going to go, I'm a nonprofit director. I don't have a ton of staff. I don't have a ton of time. We have very limited funds. I'm not going to spend those funds and the time it would take to go through those processes in Lake Stevens when I can build that housing and meet the need in another city. And that's how Lake Stevens loses out. We don't have that support in our own community.
If I'm going to play devil's advocate, if resources are that scarce and the permitting process is that, onerous, I guess then my initial reaction is to be more concerned about the level of service and the consistency that facility, that management team would provide. I mean, I would expect that, looking at the definitions we do have, these are sophisticated organizations with deep skill sets. And I would hope that they're familiar with permitting processes and fairly comfortable navigating this type of stuff. So, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to have any knowledge of this, but just from a general business perspective, if someone is that turned off by the permitting process, sorry. It would make me wonder, are they a good candidate for successfully running that facility in our city?
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of being turned off. I think it's they have to run lean and they have to be efficient. And the funding that funds capital development isn't the same funding that funds services. So you can't compare apples to oranges. I think they're still very dedicated service providers. They're just going to take the path of least resistance.
Hey, for sake of time, as we have 2 more public hearings and 3 or 4 action items, what's the council want to do on this?
I would move to approve updated ordinance 1209 as submitted.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Gary, are you reaching for a discussion?
Yes, I would like to say I do not support that motion. I do think it needs to be amended to include the transitional housing to the type 2 method and would support an amendment to this ordinance.
So you can make an amendment to the motion if you wish.
I would make an amendment to this ordinance 1209, I believe it is, that would include transitional housing to a type 2 development process or application permit process.
What's that? We amended the original motion.
Yeah, so you do amendments and then you ultimately pass the original motion. Okay, so I have an amendment. I have a motion to add transitional housing to 14.44.100. That be correct, Gary?
Yes, I believe so.
Mayor, can you repeat the section number 14?
14.44.100. Is that clear enough for you, David?
Can I ask a question of the council?
You can, give me 1 second. Do I have a second on the amendment?
Second.
Okay, I have a second so we can have discussion. Go ahead, Russ.
Okay, asking for clarification. So as a type 2 permit, as the supplementary regulations are written, they are specific for emergency type housing. They're probably not as well suited for transitional housing. There will be some definite differences where transitional housing would operate just like your house, except your landlord would be a nonprofit agency. So as you make your motion, I guess I want you to give staff direction. Were you expecting it to be subject to these criteria, supplementary criteria? And if that's the case, I think we would need to extend this, revisit it into the next year. The alternative, if you want a type 2 process, that usually is what we use for land uses, would be through an administrative conditional use permit. That's still going to give additional a set of criteria that would be evaluated to determine how it fits into any particular neighborhood and if there are definable impacts from that use. So anyway, just looking for some clarification from council. If you want to use a type 2 process, that's great. I just need to know what criteria my staff would use to review an application against.
So the last option you mentioned, I guess the important part for me is that once it's issued, the follow-up, the renewal, the compliance tools and mechanisms, are those all present in that last option you mentioned?
In an administrative conditional use permit, they are not subject to renewal, but they are subject to revocation if they are not being run according to the permit or the conditions as issued.
And does that require like the site management plan and all that stuff?
No, it doesn't have a site management plan. It has a different set of criteria, again, that looks at the use and identifying specific impacts for that type of use, which again, I draw a difference between the emergency and permitted supportive housing and transitional housing, which again is going to operate like an adult family home, other uses that we already have in the city. It's just your landlord is a nonprofit and is providing you some other support systems that you wouldn't have in a typical family home. That's why I say it's akin to something like an adult family home that is providing some additional services along with the housing services.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is if the council's wish for transitional housing to go under a type 2, that it would be best, this is just my guidance, to not pass the amendment nor the original motion, but have the staff go back to work and create a section for transitional housing and what the type 2 looks like?
That would be another option, yes.
Would that be going back to the planning commission?
I would recommend to go back to the planning commission if you wanted to add an entire new section and reevaluate.
Okay, so those are some things to think about. But we do have an amendment on the floor. Go ahead, Gary.
I was just going to say, I'm looking at 1444-100, and I would like for the planning director to point out why would transitionary housing be inconsistent with any of these items that are listed here, B, C, D, E, F, and F. There's 2 Fs on here. I'm kind of at a loss as to why this would be any different.
Again, I would go back to the intensity of the use, where transitional housing is really acts as a landlord who would be a nonprofit organization, would be providing that role as landlord as well as some services. which in any other type of residential use wouldn't typically require a renewal of a permit, nor would it require a site management plan to be cited in any particular residential use. I agree, these are special circumstances, or it's a different type of use that is closely associated. We just haven't really thought of it specifically in this context.
But of the issues that Councilmember Donahue brought up, these particular items here, B, C, D, E, F, and F, those address his concerns. So I'm not understanding why it would be a different world we're entering into.
Yeah. And those are general criteria that are essentially under a administrative conditional use permit, that you are not permitting a nuisance activity. I'm just suggesting that this type of use is more akin to a standard residential use. It doesn't mean these supplementary.
That's where we have some opinion, I believe.
Yep.
So,
Russ, if I can jump in for a sec, okay. Despite your best efforts, I'm going to ask you to maybe shoot from the hip here and give me an answer. If we just put it into 1444-100, would it be catastrophic? And the reason I ask is because I'm counting here, and I'm kind of looking at the motions that have been made and where it's falling. I'm not entirely sure that we're going to get 4 votes on this either way. So I suspect we're going to end up coming back to this. So for the sake of moving it forward, would it be acceptable to say, okay, we're going to put it into 1444-100, and then if it pans out the way I think it will, more time will be had and we'll save some meeting time tonight.
Yeah, that's up to the council on how you want to direct that.
Okay. All right. So I need a reminder. What was Gary's motion? Just to put
Gary's
it,
motion is to add transitional housing to section 14.44.100 as a type 2 permit.
okay. And I seconded that. So
That's seconded. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Are we voting?
We're just on the amendment.
Great.
Just on the amendment. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
That was 4 ayes.
Wait,
3.
4? I think it was 3.
I heard 3. Let's roll call it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Daughtry,
Nay.
Councilmember Donahue,
Aye.
Councilmember Peter Sagan,
aye.
Councilmember Shipman,
Aye.
Councilmember Jorstad,
No.
Okay, so amendment passes 3-5. We've got 5 here tonight, not
Yeah.
7.
Is it a majority of attendance or a majority of the council?
Attendance.
Attendance.
I retract my previous statement.
3-5.
yeah, it's
So the amendment passes. So we go back to the original motion, and I will ask again, are there any other amendments to the original motion that want to be offered up?
Mayor Gailey, if I could just clarify one thing, it would be not just amendments that would be required to 1444-100 to add transitional housing. We would need to update the permissible use table in chapter 1440 to change that from just an outright permitted use with no supplementary use regulations. We would need to add that footnote that references that they need to comply with 1444-100. And then just if there were any, we also have some proposed changes to the parking in chapter 1472.
Okay, so I get it that we got some other changes.
Yeah, there's
that's
some other
impacts.
changes that.
Okay, so with
like
that,
to be needed.
we have the original motion, and we can have further discussion on the original motion.
David, are you asking for a motion to amend those sections you just listed off?
I think my suggestion is you guys kill the original motion and we have staff go back to work based upon the amendment passing, knowing that they need to get transitional housing to a type 2 permit.
Would it also at that point go back to planning commission? Or is that just staff work?
I think that's Russ's prerogative at that point, whether,
Council's direction, if they want to read. and back to planning commission, or if they've given us, that's, sorry, the council's direction, if they want to remand it back to planning commission, or if you feel like you've given us enough information to make the changes, it can go straight back to council.
Okay, let's do this. Can I get a call for the vote on the original motion
Call for the vote.
But now it's as amended, correct?
as amended?
As
Want a
amended.
roll call vote?
As amended by Councilmember Peter Shagan?
Yeah, the only amendment that passed.
Okay.
So, yes, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Shipman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorstad,
No.
Councilmember Peter Sagan,
Yes.
Councilmember Daughtry,
No.
Councilmember Donahue.
Yes.
Okay, it passed.
Okay, so. All right, so now we've only amended it to the 0.10100, which means I think staff's gonna have to come back with additional work to put it into the areas that it wasn't placed into. Does that make sense?
Unless council wants to make a friendly amendment to, or a second amendment to make those other changes now.
I move to make those other changes now.
Dave, do you have
Second.
enough?
I think we're gonna need to state for the record what those changes are.
Can I have David state them? Because he stated a lot. Okay.
Yeah, so I would say in addition, that the motion that was passed as amended was for changes to chapter 1444 100 to include transitional housing being subject to those supplementary use regulations. And that there would be corresponding changes to the permissible uses table in chapter 1440 to note that transitional housing is subject to those criteria. That would be including the same footnote as has been proposed to be inserted for emergency housing and emergency shelters. And also any changes to chapter 1472 to reference the preparation of a parking study, which is one of the supplementary use regulations required by chapter 1444 100, which would now be applied to transitional housing.
Okay.
Need a second.
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 Okay. So we have an amendment to the original motion, a friendly amendment to the original motion, actually to the amendment to the original motion, of what David just said. Are we okay with that?
Open for discussion?
Open for
I
discussion.
think it is irresponsible for council to make an amendment, pass an amendment, accept a friendly amendment addressing so many areas of this ordinance that's been presented, it's gone through planning commission process, it's gone through now the second week of public hearing. Sort of at the last minute without giving planning commission a chance to deliberate and go back through this, without giving staff a chance to go back through this. I think that this feels rushed and irresponsible, and I don't support this.
Any further discussion?
I agree. This was not as smooth a process as I would have liked, but here we are.
Any further discussion? All right, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Jorstad,
No.
Councilmember Donahue,
Yes.
Councilmember Shipman,
Yes.
Councilmember Peter Sagan,
Yes.
Councilmember Daughtry,
No.
passed.
Okay, most, friendly amendment passes. All right. With that, we'll move on to the next public hearing, which is, code amendments, with Christy Schmidt.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Christy Schmidt, Planning Manager. Tonight, I'm back before you for the public hearing for the amendments to definitions, concurrency, and traffic impact fees to our code. You last had a study session on this back on November 18th. And let me go ahead and change to full screen here. There we go. That looks a bit better. Okay. So within your packet tonight, you had a total of 7 items. You have the strikeout versions of the amendments. You also have all the public notice requirements along with the SEPA information and the ordinance that is before you this evening, Ordinance 1212, along with the Planning Commission recommendation letter. Just some background information for everybody. The Planning Commission has held 3 workshops on this particular code amendments, starting in February all the way till October. The 60-day state notices to Department of Commerce, they were issued back in October. The Planning Commission held a public hearing back in November on this. And their first hearing was actually on the 19th of November, and they continued it until December 3rd. And that was based on input received at the last City Council study session, which was on the 18th, where we heard public testimony. So that brings us here tonight with the Planning Commission recommendation to the public hearing before the City Council. The amendments before you, this is just a brief overview. If you'd like to go through the strikeouts in detail again, we can certainly do that. These are the global areas that are being proposed for amendments within 14.110. We're updating the level of service standards to match the 2024 comprehensive plan. We've clarified exemptions, including for single-family dwelling units. We updated it to have new technology to match the RCWs. In addition, we revised language based on available capacity, and we also fixed some minor grammatical and some non-substantive changes. The full strikeout version in your packet is attachment 1. The other area we tackled here as far as amendments for consistency is we added quite a few new definitions per the state code and to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. We also took a look at our methodology traffic impact fees and our ITE trip generation data. We've made those references consistent. And we also included multimodal requirements, which includes facilities for biking and walking, etc. We've refined our level of service standards to meet the comprehensive plan, and we revised the traffic impact zone map. We do have one item coming back before you this evening, and this is the discussion on the affordable exemptions. And that's the RCW 8202 that we discussed about whether the council would like to include affordable housing impact fee reductions ranging from 100% down to 20%. And we have samples of that language. We can look at that again when we come to that discussion point. So I wanted to just put that out for you to think about until we get to that point in the PowerPoint presentation. We also provide clarifications to how credits are provided, and we included some administrative responsibilities and some minor grammatical issues also for these 2 chapters. So before you tonight, the record reflects that the code amendment does meet the state and regulatory requirements as far as public noticing, comprehensive plan, does comply with our Growth Management Act, RCW 3670A 106, and we have provided our notices to Commerce. And then obviously, should pending adoption, we will send them our final notice of intent. The categorical, this process is actually not subject to SEPA because it is exempt because it's a development code regulation. And there is an exemption letter within your packet. With that, I'd refer you to the Planning Commission's recommendation. Their recommendation to the City Council is to approve the proposed amendments before you for 1408, 14.110, and 14.112. And with that, I would like to open it up for council discussions and questions for staff. And in particularly, if you would like to see the alternatives that we had shown you before for the exemptions for affordable housing, I can pull up the previous PowerPoint presentation to go through the reductions amount to see if that's something the council is interested in including in the code.
I would appreciate being able to see that.
Okay,
Thank
give
you.
me just a second here and I will pull them up. I'm going to stop sharing and find the other presentation. Okay. Go back to Zoom. All righty, here we go. I'll make this large so we can all see it. It's a little slow. Okay. Here we go. So this first graphic shows the AMI breakdown, the average medium income for each bracket, the 0 to 30, 30 to 50, and 50 to 80. And it shows our GMA need for our housing requirements, and it has our likely to construct amount. So what we did in this graphic, and I would like to point out the impact fee here are the previous ones, and that we anticipate based on our meeting with Transpo that the traffic impact fees and the methodology, those numbers have been separated out from this packet. That's why tonight you just have the code amendments. But we anticipate these fees being dropped. And so the full build out reduction would probably have a total of about a 25 to 30% less total cost than what you see reflected here with the new traffic impact fees that will be coming back to you later next month. So I just wanted to point that out, that we don't have the final numbers yet, but this is what we anticipate based on our couple meetings with Transpo. So as you can see, the full build out cost, this is the amount that if the city were to provide a reduction at the full amount, this is the amount that the city would lose in impact fees and or have to compensate for. And if you'd like, I can show you the next graphic here, which is a further breakdown. Here, this is the reduction amounts offered if you were to do an 80%, a 50%, and then a 20%. So as you can see, the amounts on the bottom, if full build out, if that many units were to be constructed and we were to meet our housing targets, and if you were to provide that reduction in that amount, this is the amount of money that we would have to compensate for, the city would, to provide that affordable housing incentive or reduction in the traffic impact fee.
I have a quick question about the previous slide.
Please. Okay, let me go back to that one.
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry. The difference between the orange column and the blue column. The orange column is the transportation impact fee reductions for the full build out, and that is the GMA need build out.
That is, yes.
Okay.
That is the GMA.
Just to point out the likelihood of us building 2,537 units of housing, it's pretty low, especially given just, the buildable land in our city. The blue column is specific to the likely to construct numbers. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is. You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other clarifications or questions?
Could I see the next slide one more time, please?
Yes. Okay. So this slide here shows if the traffic impact fee, that's what the TIF stands for, if it was reduced by 80%, 50, or 20, and then the impacts that would have on the budget.
And are these in relation to what we're expecting to happen? Or, which column does that relate to in the previous slide?
Oh, let me see here. I believe that is, let me see if it's likely to construct or to construct. Gonna have to do some math here. Hold on. Let's see, 20%, 45. Guessing it's likely to construct. It looks like by the math that it's likely to construct.
The notes at the bottom do say under a likely to construct
Yes.
option.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Glad my math was spot on. Okay. Any further questions from the council?
Any other questions for Christie?
The timeline on this is this for 2026. If you're referring to, do we have a hard deadline for adoption? Is that your question? I guess would this be going into our 2026 budget? Where would these numbers be reflected?
It would be for 2026.
Okay.
And in this particular case, the exemption would be included in the code amendment itself. And then once we adopt the traffic impact fee, then the fee would be in place, and that would be sometime next year.
Let me maybe step in a little bit too. So there's not a specific reduction that you're going to see in any budget. A couple of meetings ago when we talked about this, council had asked us to give some scenarios of what budget impact would be. And we're really looking at this over a 20-year horizon, not over any particular year. So what you would see is going to range between 10% of traffic impact fees over the 20 years to, maybe 30%. And as Christy suggested, based on the additional work we've done on the fees, the dollar amounts you're seeing over that 20-year horizon will probably go down by around 25%. So it's, we'll say, a minimal annual impact on transportation impact fees.
So the decision before council tonight is whether or not you'd like to offer a reduced traffic impact fee for affordable housing.
Given how far we are away from the Growth Management Act targets, I think that it is incumbent upon us to do whatever we can to encourage affordable housing developers to consider Lake Stevens. I think that right now is one of the only tools that we have. So I would propose that we move forward with 100% reduction for units that are being built for our low-income community members.
Is that a motion?
Any other comments?
I would like to see us move forward on some changes to encourage affordable housing as well. I'm not sure 100% is what I would support, but I definitely would like to see some movement in that direction.
Okay, I'm gonna go. Chris, do you have anything additional before I open up for public comment?
That would be it.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the public hearing for public comment at this time on just this topic. Is there anyone online who wishes to provide public comment?
I don't see anybody online, but I do want to alert the council to an email we received earlier from Tom Hansen. It was regarding this ordinance called.
Oh, thank you, Kelly.
Tom Hansen sent you guys an email. I did forward it on around 3:30 today.
Okay, and is there anyone in person who wishes to comment on just this topic? All right, seeing none, hearing none, I'll close the public comments portion. Give the floor back to Christy. Do you have anything additional?
I do want to say in regards to Mr. Hansen's comments today, I spoke with him a couple times today because he's vacationing right now in the winter. And so him and I did discuss his request to include the level of service, the full level of service from the comprehensive plan, which it's 9 pages from the comp plan. His request is to see it summarized within the code. I did explain to him that the staff's recommendation to the planning commission was to leave it how it is. And so I encouraged him that if he had any additional concerns to write in, so hence he did write in his comment letter. And then should and if the city council want to see level of services put within the code, staff could work to reduce it down. It would probably be about an additional 1.5 pages or 2 pages in the code to make sure that we included all the level of service in there because there is 8 of them. So I just wanted to point that out as something to consider.
Okay, so with that, is there any discussion amongst the council on this topic?
I might ask Christy to do a little bit more math. really quick.
Okay,
If you could go back to the 100% slide
there we go.
and looking at the blue column,
Blue column.
total likely to construct 100% reduction scenario. Total scenario 1, the second row from the bottom, where it
Gotcha.
shows that the total likely to construct number of units is 445.
Uh-huh.
Just to be clear, that's saying if 445 units were built in 2026
Correct.
and we reduced their traffic impact fees by 100%, the city would need to come up with $967,000.
Yes, that
That's
is
accurate?
correct.
Okay. Okay. How many affordable housing units were developed in 2025 in Lake Stevens?
Well, we have some going in, but they're not occupied, the senior housing. So we have some that have been permitted, but they're not occupied yet.
Okay. Did we have any that went into play in 2025?
Not to my knowledge, they
Okay.
have not been occupied yet or received their official certificates of occupancy.
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell?
How many would you guess went into play in 2024? If you had, I realize we're going backwards now, but
None to my knowledge.
okay, 2023?
None to my knowledge.
Okay. And so the likelihood of getting 445 units in 1 year, pretty unlikely, but we might get 20.
Correct.
a year.
I would see more likely we'd have a smaller type scenario, a smaller multi mixed use building or 8 units, a
Okay.
fourplex or something along that lines, a smaller type.
Okay, great. Let's go with that. Let's say that an 8-unit complex went up. I realize this, maybe it's easy math. Instead of 445 units, if we had 8 units, what would be the impact to the city if we gave them 100% reduction in their traffic impact?
So depending on which traffic impact fee, oh, look, Sarah did the math for me on
Thank you,
her
Director
calculator.
Garceau.
She gets an A+ for support staff.
Excellent.
So she did 8 units. It would be, now I'm not sure which, it would be TIZ.
I was looking at the blue.
She was looking at the blue.
Is that correct?
Approximately $17,000.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel really comfortable committing our city to coming up with $17,000 to incentivize 8 units of affordable housing within our city.
I agree with that. And mainly because we've done nothing to incentivize it so far. And I would like to see some steps forward. We just talked about transitional housing and what I would call safeguards to making sure they're being used with the intent purposes. This is another step, I think, in that direction, in that right now, I think the reason none have been built is there incentives that I don't know about? Do we have incentives now for affordable housing?
We have
We do.
the multifamily tax exemption for 8% and 12% currently.
Okay. And so we have that. And so this would then piggyback on that exemption.
That is correct.
Do we have numbers on what that exemption say for things that maybe aren't occupied but were built in 2024? But those are only senior housings. We have no building for like family housing or kids getting started in Lake Stevens. Correct?
Not that's been developed recently.
No, not recently. That is true.
Gary.
Yes, I apologize. I haven't read the utmost in details on this ordinance, but the question I have is on the affordable housing. If just say 100 units come in and it's a particular area and it triggers a level of service below our threshold for concurrency purposes, are they still exempt from that of addressing throwing an intersection or a facility over our thresholds?
Just the fee. It's just the fee. It's separate from the concurrency requirement.
So potentially, I guess evaluating the impacts, like Councilmember Jorstad said, if we did 8 or 10 units, the likelihood of pushing a intersection or something over an acceptable threshold is probably not high. If we do have a 100 lot or 100 unit development come in under the guise of affordable housing, potential exists that they would waive the mitigation fees, but would still be burdened with addressing a concurrency issue.
That is true.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Good discussion. What do you need out of the council there, Christie? Do you need a motion to set the percentage and a motion to approve the ordinance?
Yes, and then in addition, I would like a motion whether or not you would like the level of service included within the level of service section of the code, or if council is acceptable to what is currently proposed by staff and the planning commission.
Okay, so how I would like to do that is if we get a motion to approve the ordinance 1212, and then we can amend with the percentage and the, what Christie just said. Anybody?
Or we could make a motion that includes that information in the original motion.
You are the epitome of efficiency.
I move to approve ordinance 1212 to include 100% total traffic impact fee reduction for affordable housing.
Second.
What about the other one that you wanted?
We can do that as an amendment. I don't care.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 1212 with 100% fee reduction. And I have a second. Do I have discussion? So we need an amendment if you want to add the additional.
Oh, Russ has his hand.
Can I ask a question before we go farther?
Sure.
So by affordable housing, what staff had presented in the slides, was it 80% and below AMI? Is
80% and below.
Okay, thank you.
As indicated. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
So the question I have again is, Christie, what was the other thing that you needed? Something about level of service?
Yes, whether the council would like to see additional level of service from the comprehensive plan added into the code section based on the public comment received.
I have a motion on the floor and we are in discussion. Is there an amendment?
I do have discussion, but I'll wait for the amendment.
I don't.
Is Gary's hand up again? or-
Gary. Gary, go ahead.
Point of clarification, do we not publish City of Lake Stevens acceptable level of service within our code?
We do have the thresholds within there, and that was our discussion with Planning Commission, is that staff felt that it was adequate, what we currently have in the code, and that it was not necessary to add in the 9 pages from the comprehensive plan or have that reduced within the code, that someone could go reference that if they needed to see additional details.
I agree with that.
Okay,
Thank you.
so no amendment? Hearing no amendment, is further discussion.
Yeah, I do have something I want to say. I'm sitting here in the unenviable position of deciding which type of bad guy I want to look like right now. I fully agree with us needing to do more as a council to support affordable housing. That said, last week, I was probably one of the loudest voices for aggressive budgeting. I spent a lot of time thinking about stress that caused staff members, what that did to people that work for the city. And if this was, a month from now, 2 months from now, maybe I could get behind something that potentially takes revenue away from the city. But after the approach I took last week, I cannot sit here and take away revenue from the city. So for that reason only, I will probably be no on this vote. But I fully expect that we do more work next year regarding affordable housing.
Okay, any further discussion? Gary, is your hand still up or is that residual?
No, it's not. I'm sorry.
Okay, so with that, I'll ask for call for the vote. All those in favor?
Can I ask for a roll call vote, please?
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Peters second? Sorry, Gary, Councilmember Peters second? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Councilmember Donahue,
No.
Councilmember Jarstad,
Yes.
Councilmember Daughtry,
Yes.
and Councilmember Shipman.
Yes.
All right, we have a motion to pass and a pass on that public hearing. We're going to move to the next public hearing, but before we do that, David, how long are you going to need?
I'll try to do it as quickly as possible because I think we have some Vikings that are dozing off. So
As quickly as possible, 5 minutes or 50 minutes?
like 5 minutes for the presentation and then however long it takes you to deliberate.
Okay, and then Barb, what are you thinking on your action items?
You know me, 10 minutes maybe.
Okay. So I would ask for a motion that we extend the meeting to, let's shoot for 8:15.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Was that out of, thank you. And with that, we're going to go to 8:15. Can I go, David? We're going to open up a public hearing now for phase 1 process code amendments. David, you are up.
Right. All right, thank you, Council. Mayor David Levitan, Principal Planner. So we have before you tonight phase 1 of what we're calling the process code amendments. So just a quick agenda. We're going to be doing a quick staff presentation, allowing for public comments, moving on to council discussion and deliberation, and then potential adoption of ordinance 1211, which is attachment 1 in your packet. So just a little bit of an overview. The Planning Commission has been working on this for the last couple of years. It's kind of gotten pushed to the side sometimes when we've been working on the other items, but there are certain things that we need to complete by the end of the year. That includes permanent language to replace interim ordinance 1192, which the City Council adopted last December 10th. That was good for a year, so we actually need to adopt it tonight. And so that would make permanent the review timelines that were established by Senate Bill 5290. So no changes proposed from what is currently included in the interim ordinance. And then we've identified a few other minor items related to refining land use permit review processes, removing subjective code language, really just trying to streamline our code language as much as possible, which is called for within the comprehensive plan. So as mentioned, this would replace interim ordinance 1192 with the same code language. It would shift design review from a type 1 permit to what's called an associated land use determination, basically further consolidating that with the building permit review process, which is called for in Senate Bill 5290 and House Bill 1293. Shift site plan review, which is a very kind of clear and objective process for evaluating things like setbacks and landscaping, shifting that from a type 2 to a type 1, adding some definitions, removing subjective language related to design review. And then there are some duplicate supplementary use regulations that we had missed a couple years ago. So we want to finally get those out of the code. They wouldn't be fully removed. They just wouldn't be in 2 places anymore. So as far as public notice and comments, this was as required. The 60-day notice was issued back in October. Council notice of public hearing was issued on November 28th. We have not received any comments on the council notice of public hearing in advance of the Planning Commission notice of public. Sorry, the Planning Commission public hearing. We did get an inquiry from the Snohomish County Camino Association of Realtors, just as far as some of the proposed changes, and we explained that those were done to comply with the Senate bill. This similar to the last code amendment that you heard, this is a procedural update that is exempt from the State Environmental Policy Act. And then there will be an opportunity to provide public comments tonight. So as noted in the staff report that accompanies tonight's proposed ordinance, it does meet the decision criteria there within the municipal code as far as consistency with the comp plan, with the Growth Management Act, and serving to enhance the public health and safety. And so as far as a recommended action for this evening, the Planning Commission did find that the code language is consistent with the approval criteria for code amendments. And so following any public comment and council discussion and deliberation, that would be before approving ordinance 1211, we are requesting for that ordinance to be approved this evening. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions for David? Hearing no questions, I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor then to public comments on just this topic. Is there anyone online who wants to provide public comments on just this topic?
I don't see anybody. Again, this is ordinance 1211, phase 1, process code amendments, public comment.
Is there anyone in person? Riveting. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public comments portion of this hearing. And David, anything further?
I do not.
Any discussion from the council?
Move to approve ordinance number 1211.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve ordinance 1211 and a second. Is there any discussion on that ordinance, on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, good job, David. That was a lightning round. Like, let's go to action items. Action item, ordinance 1210, elimination of petty cash revolving fund. Barb.
Okay, thank you, council. So I'm presenting ordinance 1210, repealing the ordinance and the Lake Stevens Municipal Code chapter regarding petty cash. In 1986, City Council adopted ordinance 282, establishing a $500 petty cash revolving fund. $100 was kept in locked cash box, while the remaining funds were in a separate bank account with Wells Fargo, managed by the clerk treasurer and now the finance director. Modern payment methods have made petty cash unnecessary. Neither the account nor the funds have been used in many years, leading to avoidable costs and reconciliation requirements. With the approval from the council, the petty cash account will be closed by depositing the final balance into the city's main account, and the separate Wells Fargo account will be closed. Any questions?
Move to approve ordinance 1210.
Second.
Third.
I have a motion to approve ordinance 1210 and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, 12B.
So Mayor, our city attorney has his hand up.
I got it.
Okay.
We're going to come back to that.
Okay, thanks.
12B.
Thank you. The next two agenda items are related and will require three separate actions. We'll start with the interlocal agreement with the City of Arlington and the grant agreement for the Office of Public Defense. Cities of Lake Stevens and Arlington entered into a local agreement in 2018 to jointly manage a grant from the Office of Public Defense aimed at improving legal representation for indigent defendants. The collaborative program supports defendants needing social services pre and post trial by funding a social advocate in our public defender's office, allowing public defenders to focus on legal aspects of the cases. The social advocate assesses client social services needs, connects them with resources such as mental health services, housing programs, coordinates with legal and support system, and assists with seeking employment. The role is crucial as clients often face significant barriers like lack of insurance, housing instability, and untreated mental health issues. These things hinder compliance with court requirements. By providing tailored support and advocacy, the social advocate helps reduce recidivism or reoffense and ensures continuous support in improving client outcomes and rehabilitation. The original agreement was previously amended in 2019, again in 2021 and 2024 to update the grant cycles and amounts. Beginning in 2027, the grant cycles will be changed to match the fiscal year of the Office of Public Defense, which is June. So rather than a 2-year grant cycle, the current grant is for the period of January 2026 through June 2027. For that period, the cities have received a $54,000 grant to continue the social advocacy program, and in addition to hire more attorneys to reduce public defense caseloads. 2/3 or $36,000 will be dispersed in January 2026 and the remaining $18,000 in January 2027. Funding for the social advocacy program increased from 31,800 to 33,800 in 2026, just due to basic cost increases. The grant covers 20,000 of that amount. The remaining 13,800 comes from the local matches and remains unchanged from prior years. Arlington's contribution remains 60%, and Lake Stevens is 40% or $5,520 for 2026, and half of that amount for the period of January to June of 2027. The remaining 16,000 for 2026 will be shared equally between Arlington and Lake Stevens to supplement the increased public defense costs due to changes in public defense standards, which require a significant reduction in attorney caseloads. As the lead agency for the grant, Lake Stevens will continue to make payments with grant funding on behalf of City of Arlington, as well as our own payments. And then rather than amending the current ILA again, the new ILA is recommended due to changes in the grant periods and the funding uses, which allows for us to use it for public defense as well. The ILA has been reviewed by both city attorneys and is being presented to City of Arlington Council this month for approval as well. Any questions?
Do we have any questions for Barb?
I will need 2 separate actions. Would you like me to read them and you want to say, go for it? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and read the actions, please.
I think Councilmember Jorstad was going to go ahead and do that.
Or
I move to authorize the mayor to execute the interlocal agreement between the city of Lake Stevens and the city of Arlington to administer the Joint Office of Public Defense grant.
Second.
okay, so I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, and then we need a
I
second.
moved to authorize the city to enter into a grant agreement number 1 Alpha Alpha 26059 with Washington Office of Public Defense.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, Barb, you are up for 12 Charlie next.
As just discussed, our Arlington and Lake Stevens share grant funding for Public Defender Social Services Program. The City of Lake Stevens has a professional service agreement with Feldman and Lee to provide indigent defense, and a separate agreement, public services agreement, to provide social advocacy services under the grant funded program. This action is to amend the professional services agreement for social advocacy services to extend the agreement to June 30th, 2027, matching the grant's terms. An amendment to the public defense contract is still being negotiated and will come to council as a separate action at a later date with no bearing on this agreement. Any questions?
Just a comment for council. I, in my other hat, have an opportunity to work with the social worker employed by Feldman and Lee and to see the work that they do, and am consistently impressed by their advocacy and their care and their efficiency with which they do this work. So I think we are really lucky to be able to partner with them.
I agree. Okay, do I have a motion?
Move to approve amendment number 5 to the professional services agreement with Feldman and Lee.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, let's go to discussion item 13. Alba Christie, you're back up.
All right. Good evening, City Council. Christy Schmidt. This is your last item on the agenda, I believe, tonight. I'm bringing forth to you a development agreement, a termination agreement for the Lakeview Flats. Just for some background history, and there's no PowerPoint tonight. This is just a short one. The City Council adopted the development agreement back in 2022. Since that time, the applicant, who is here this evening, the Lewandowskis, Brian and Amy are here. They went ahead and submitted land use permits, received approvals. They had their building permit. Everything was approved, and due to the change in the economy, their building permit expired. They did not pursue that development proposal. And since that time, they are in planning and intending to develop a more smaller scale development. So it is their wish at this time to terminate the original development agreement, and whatever they decide to pursue could be done under the existing development code regulations. Therefore, in front of the City Council tonight is Resolution 25-112. And I would like to point out that if the City Council does wish, if you're so inclined to approve it this evening, that would be wonderful. If not, I would gladly bring it back on the consent agenda for the 16th. And with that, is there any questions for myself or the applicant this evening?
Kelly, can we approve this tonight? we can't approve this tonight because it's not it hasn't been noticed.
Yeah, I mean, you already approved your agenda earlier to be
Yeah,
discussion.
we can discuss it and if, we can always bring it back on a consent agenda if there's no issues.
Perfect.
Is it possible to get additional information about what the new proposed use might be?
That would be up to the applicant if they have firm development proposals at this time.
I can generally say what we've seen in a pre-application setting is just a smaller version of the prior developments. So still a couple of tenant spaces. It really just would remove the residential portion.
Didn't it go from 3 stories to 2-story?
That's
remember
correct.
right?
Yes.
And reducing or eliminating the residential portion?
Eliminating.
Any further discussion with Christie on this? Go ahead.
I would like to see this come back as an action item and not on consent. And if it is on consent, I would pull it off because I want to have further
If
discussion.
you have,
Because I have the power.
if you have a second.
That's exactly right.
Is there anything specific that you want staff to bring back with more information?
More information about what the impact of the change on our city might be.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
All right, great presentation, Christie. And with that,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.